Hello, my name is Kate Rachel Chahaya Sullivan, and this is my admission for Gajah Mada Debating Society. With the motion of that this house believed that the world would be better off if no one believed in afterlife, I am here as opposition, and I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We need to understand that afterlife as a concept is one of the main foundations on why religious beliefs exist in the very first place. Religion, in an objective perspective, did not just appear out of thin air, right? It appeared, and it is a strong identity inside of society for a reason. That is something that we notice on what government has failed to characterize. I will get into my rebuttals after my setup, so I will talk about the concept of afterlife first. We need to understand that the concept of afterlife is the idea of revelation after the current life in itself. So you will have something, karma, heaven or life, after the current life that you live in right now. Most religion beliefs would depict this type of idea of the afterlife as the consequences of one action. If you were a good person, then you would get good karma, you would go to heaven. Or if you were a bad person, you would go to hell, or you would get bad karma, and you'll be reincarnated. Let's say in like Buddhist or Hinduism religions, you would be reincarnated based on the karma that you have from your previous lives, or in Abrahamic religions you would have heaven or hell. We need to understand, before going on to my first argument, we really need to understand the essence of humanity and humans itself, right? Humans are cruel, horrid creatures who hurt each other and also cause pain toward one another. But not only that, they are also loving, caring beings who protect their own, which really depicts on how humans have two very drastic different sides. These are the sides inside of humanity, but we really need to acknowledge and understand that one of these sides are undoubtedly much more noticeable and much more consequential than the other. We need to understand that moral control is essential in humanity and also in society. We don't need to be delusional or utopic that believe that the majority of humans are angels or righteous beings on their own accord, because we need to understand that they are not. They are awful people, right? Further contextualization will be put in my first layer of the argument about this point. We need to then I will go into what I believe on what our team believe in what the government's burden is. We believe that the government's burden is they need to prove on why people should actually be better off when there is no afterlife. Not talking about some things regarding utopic and dystopian things, and government needs to characterize and explain on how exactly will this be realistic to the nature of humans itself, right? Now, going into my rebuttals against the government's claims and argument is that, first of all, government talks about and claims that Buddhism is one of the religions that don't believe in afterlife, which, just to fact check, that is wrong. Buddhism believes in reincarnation and bad karma and good karma, and in the essence of afterlife itself, that is a life after death. So that, just getting that out of the way. And from what we notice, like I've said before, government is really living inside of a very dystopian world where it seems like it is much more better, where people don't have this type of moral burden in itself. Now, that is why I will go into my first layer of my argument, explaining on why the concept of afterlife is very important, right? For a context here, afterlife is the foundation of any major belief. It's one of the reasons why people keep believing in the very first place, right? Most people's moral compasses is based on their beliefs in karma or heaven or hell. This is the likelihood of humanity. Why afterlife as a belief is so essential to society, I will give you some surface level views, right? One is an act of constraint. You and me, or anyone, can't turn a blind eye towards the fact on how many people are not doing horrible things, not because the idea or the action itself is wrong, but because they don't want to face any consequences or repercussions in the afterlife. The amount of people in status quo, whether IRL or online, that have admitted to have horrible urges to hurt others or themselves are undeniable. This is something that is very noticeable inside of life in itself. Examples of constraining these type of urges that we notice is that people are not acting upon doing, I'm sorry, trigger warning, doing sexual assault, doing murder, doing battery, doing any other forms of assault, or that is the cases of hurting others. But there are also cases of people restraining themselves of not falling into crises such as addiction, suicide, or even other forms of abuse, right? But before I move on, of course, we need to clarify that yes, in status quo, people still do act upon of these actions, and we are not going to turn a blind eye upon that, right? We still have, of course, we'll acknowledge that. But the issue here that we're trying to portray is that those who actually have genuine beliefs in this afterlife do not act upon these constraints, which in conclusion causes lesser people in status quo to do these actions, and even in status quo in itself, lots of people still act upon of this concept, these actions, right? And we really need to understand that half of the world population believe in the afterlife, regardless if they're religious, agnostic, or agnostic, right? Mostly the people who don't believe in these things are maybe atheists. That's why afterlife, in the eyes of believer, acts as a mental barrier to limit themselves and not act upon these type of heinous thoughts or even urges. Now, second, moral guidance and life goals. Afterlife acts as the guidance for the majority of human, because majority of humanity actually rely on religion and its consequences in the afterlife as the guidance of whether what to do or what not to do, what is right or what is wrong, right? Which in return creates a moral guideline inside of humanity from the early ages, right? Just think about it here. This is some extended level view of analyzation. How did we even get here in the very first place? How does our criminal justice system determine what is lawful, what is not, what is legal, what is not, what is right, what is not, right? Of course, all of these things may and must have a base towards the creation of them, and we believe that religion and the idea of afterlife as a consequence plays a big role inside of that. this 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 instead would actually conclude towards why this can leads towards life goals that goes hand in hand with being kind and doing actions that are beneficial towards others. So at the end of the day, people can feel like, oh, they deserve to go to heaven, they can go to receive good karma, and etc. Third point of my argument is that people can have a sense of hope. Having hope and towards relief after death, just do things. Having hope to have any sort of relief after death allows people to feel like, okay, no matter what happens right now, there is somewhere later in life, after my life, where I can have peace and also revelation, where even though I am having a horrible life right now, if I do good, if I'm a lawful person, then I can have and I can hope to live a better life later. For example, of this case is that people in the Dalit hierarchy in India in the past being treated as less than humans, but believe in the religion of Hinduism itself and karma plus reincarnation. So even though they're living everything in this life that is awful, what at the end of the day, there is a better life for me after all of this. That is the one of the things that we notice. Not only that, but the sense of hope that can actually be characterized here is a sense of justice. The world may not give justice towards those who deserve it. That is undeniable, especially in the modern world where the CGS system are often very disappointing. Those who actually have been wrong can try to seek out peace by believing that those wrongdoers will actually face their karma at the end of the day, at the end of their lives, which or even having that punishment inside of the afterlife, which in some cases can be linked back towards the acts of constraint, where they actually avoid in taking irrational decisions in their own hands, such as maybe murdering someone, hurting someone, or hurting themselves even. That is why, to conclude my argument here today, my debate here today, we believe that afterlife is a very complex topic, and it is so important to have these things as a moral guideline and oral moral constraint towards humanity as a whole. Without That's why we believe that us living in a realistic world will have much more of a higher chance in comparison to the dystopian government's argument. Thank you very much. Bye bye.